terrified, rushing, squeezing past people, holding my side. I think that's where you'd find me. That's how it felt. That's how this death felt, and how the response to this death felt. It felt like I was walking with a gunshot wound that I didn't want anybody to see. And it felt like the blood was soaking through my shirt and dripping down my leg. And I was rushing to try and find a quiet space to attend to this. Right. So this episode is completely dedicated to my mom. I lost her from this physical realm on June 28th, 2024. Hi guys, today's episode of Open Therapy is going to be about relationships in a different sense. I guess looking at relationships and grief. I don't know if you want to say relationships with those who are no longer alive. Yeah. If this is triggering for you, I completely understand. If you've also lost somebody recently, please stick around, or if you've lost someone along as many years ago as it is, because as we know, grief doesn't stop. Or if you wonder about losing someone close to you in the future, stick around for this conversation. Let's talk about it. It's always difficult when death is not something that you could have wrapped your head around or that you were expecting. She went in for heart surgery, and this was a very, very serious surgery, so we understood the seriousness of it. We understood the risks of it, and she spent weeks reading up about it herself, speaking to people she knows personally, or that she knew personally, that had gone through the surgery as well. So she was also very aware of the risks. My dad, who is in the medical field, she's also has a background in the medical field, and they both did a lot of research, found the best doctors that we could here in Jamaica, and went in and made the decision to you know, do this surgery. I'm trying to wrap this story up in as compact as possible to say what happened. I guess to cut a long story short, she came out of surgery long after we had expected. So the point is, the amount of hours that we were told that the surgery would take. The first thing I remember is that the surgery took tremendously longer than that. So that was the first frightening part of this experience. Eventually, she came out of surgery. We were told that she was out. We were told that she was stable. At the time, my oldest brother and my dad were at the intensive care unit, um, waiting to be given the green light where we all could go and see her. Um, as they were preparing to go inside to see her, um, they were told that there was an emergency and there were no visitors allowed. So they were ushered back outside. Um, at that point, I believe I got a call from my brother, and he told me what happened. Basically, that there was emergency, and they weren't allowed to go in, and they are not sure if the emergency was mom. Shortly uh, after waiting for quite some time, it was communicated that the emergency that took place, preventing them to go in, was actually an emergency with my mother. They said that she looked like she was coming out of sedation, um, and in the snap of a finger, um, went completely unconscious. And the emergency that they were told happened was them trying to revive her. So at that point, when I was told that the emergency was her, I luckily, by the support of extended family, left my daughter with an extended family member and headed directly to the hospital. My other brother and his wife was also there. Of course, my dad and his good friend, who happens to be my godfather, was also there. I joined them sitting outside of this ICU unit, waiting to hear. This was into the wee hours of the morning until maybe 3 a.m. Before we were allowed to go in and see her. I'm not sure I really was understanding what was happening then. I just remember at that time feeling really confused, really scared, not really understanding what was happening, and really hopeful. I remember whispering to her that everything was going to be okay, and the doctors did what they should have done, and they are taking very good care of you. I was trying to be as comforting as possible because I was so that she could possibly hear me. So fast forward from that night, um, she was in this state, unresponsive state, for 2 weeks. It was difficult. It was a difficult 2 weeks seeing her like that. And I mean, several other problems came, you know, just trying to figure out if that period where she went completely, um, I guess, essentially flatlined. Whenever you go like that and they bring you back, the amount of time that you go is really, really important, to your brain and I guess other organs. But we became very concerned about how this would have affected her brain. Um, we eventually had her hooked up to a machine and realized that brain activity was very, very low. One thing about my mother, she always said she wouldn't want to live in that kind of state. She didn't want to um, get to that state where she didn't know herself, where she couldn't take care of herself. Um, you know, She didn't want to be a burden to anyone. She didn't want to live with any of her kids. She'd always make statements like that. You know, when she died, my mom was not afraid of talking about death. Um, in the days leading up to her surgery, it was only then that I understood that she was afraid of death, because she had spoken about death for my whole life as something to expect from her, and which I'm grateful. But I didn't see the fear until maybe a week leading up that she was scared. The hug that I got the night before her surgery was a memorable one, and a different one. And I think she was scared. My dad kind of says the same about the hug he got the morning when they were wheeling her around. And he said it was a hug like no other, almost like she knew, even looking back on maybe a week before that, when we had to uh, kind of rally people in giving blood. Yeah, when someone's going up for surgery, they're going to need a certain amount of blood, and I went and asked the person in the episode right before this one, in episode 5, Jan, who I'm just to this will always be grateful for, because I went there. She said she would come and also give blood for mom. And it turned out when I went there and they checked me, my iron level was too low. I was unable to give. I'm deathly afraid of needles, and I was also unable to give. So it was just, yeah. I remember hearing in the room that I'm unable to give, and coming out and just seeing my friend and bawling, just outpour of emotion at that point. This was the first uncomfortable um, feeling that I had inside with this experience. I don't know what it was, but somehow that moment felt significant. I felt um, I couldn't help her, I couldn't support her, and I didn't trust the experience in that moment. So I just remember coming out and bawling in Jan's arms, Um, I'll always be grateful for that moment with you, Jana, for being there, and that day giving 2 bags of blood for my mother. Love you. Um, I think that same day, my brother and his wife came, and my wife and his wife, my sister-in-law, also gave 2 bloods. Unfortunately, my brother was also unable to give just a lot of things, or I mean, support from friends and those who become like your community in that moment was just tremendous, and something it's hard to forget. Yeah, it was excruciating at one point to see her like she had become very, very swollen. And I mean, I won't go into details. There are probably some people who don't want the details, but it was excruciating to see her in the state that she was in. At one point I had gotten sick, and so I didn't get to visit her for maybe a day or two. I don't remember if it was a day and a half or 2 days, because I was just so afraid of exposing her to any sort of virus I may have had. And I went back and almost broke into tears when I saw her, because she had deteriorated physically in those 2 days so much. Um, and it was just crazy, There were 2 people that I spoke to kind of religiously going through this, other than immediate family. There was someone who belonged to the same church as mom, who was a friend who she had told me that she prayed with. And, it's someone that she would take all her life struggles and troubles to, and she would sit and pray with her. And somehow I kind of just latched on to her in this process, because I just feel like If this is mom, if this is someone mom trusted with her vulnerable and soft moments in life where she's worried, all the worries she had for herself, for her kids, for her life, if this is someone she trusted to sit beside her and pray with her, I really, really want her to pray with me. And so I was religious in giving her updates. I was religious. She was religious in reaching out and being there for me. I'll never forget it. And also, my good friend who was in episode 1 is just naturally that kind of person, naturally supportive, naturally shows up emotionally for people. And so, of course, she was herself and she was a great support for someone who, like me, who's pretty avoidant and, you know, kind of the opposite. I don't know if I'm the opposite, but I'm just not as good at that as she is. I'm just grateful that she was there in the way she was there, and the support from those 3 people that I've mentioned, um, other than immediate family, was really, really like life changing. The morning my mom died, the strangest thing about death for me. So my immediate family, I have 2 older brothers. They have partners, and I have my dad. And we all, in terms of the siblings, we all handled the death of our mother differently. So if you think of our family out in a huge, crowded arena, it's packed with people. You would see that brother over here kind of sitting on a little, I guess, level. I don't know if you'd call it a stage, maybe some sort of put together stage in the arena. You would see him sitting on it. You'd see his wife and his 2 kids near his feet or near him as he spoke to a crowd of people on a microphone, calling them forward. My other brother, I feel like you'd find him and his partner kind of working the circumference of a room, working the arena, greeting and speaking to people as they could quickly walking by. I feel like that was how they were handling it. It was more on a mass level. At some points when they could shift without being noticed, they would. I think his partner was more supportive, maybe holding his hand close behind him, while he kind of led that circling of the circumference of the arena. My dad, you would probably find him in the center, not on a pedestal, not with a microphone. Really sad. And a lot of people around him, and him doing his best and in his own way speaking to every single one, shaking every single one's hand, looking into every single one's eyes. And yeah. And then you'd find me walking through this arena, terrified, rushing, squeezing past people, holding my side. I think that's where you'd find me. That's how it felt. That's how this death felt, and how the response to this death felt. It felt like I was walking with a gunshot wound that I didn't want anybody to see. And it felt like the blood was soaking through my shirt and dripping down my leg. And I was rushing to try and find a quiet space to attend to this. So if people were coming up to me, I was almost like looking at the wound and looking at them uncomfortably and being really, rushing through and saying, well, yeah, okay, thanks, and moving, bustling through, trying desperately to find a corner or to get out of the arena to attend to it. If I needed to attend to it myself, to get a bandage, to find something to stop press to stop the bleeding, or if I needed to get help, someone professionally who could actually help me with this wound. I didn't want anybody to see that I was shot. I was more so focused on getting out of the arena to somewhere quiet and away from everyone to really process that I've been shot, to really process that I'm bleeding down my leg, to really process how can this be fixed so my life can move forward. Yeah, so that was my experience. And the bus going and sweeping through the crowd and having people know that I'm shot, even though I'm trying to sort this out. I'm still processing and figuring it out was extremely difficult for me. I remember finding out my mom died, I believe it was sometime after 10 a.m. Maybe, like, just say if it was 10:05. I was getting a DM at 10:08. Sorry to hear about mom. I was flabbergasted. I almost dropped my phone. I was in tears. I almost dropped the phone. I threw it on the bed. I said, I almost just wanted to scream, no, don't do that. What do you, and then the messages started coming in, the calls, and I took the calls that I could from family. It was excruciating. Yeah. It was excruciating for me to kind of wrap my head around the fact that so many people knew um, before I could even process what was happening, before I could even process how the fabric of my whole entire life had changed. Um, there were like 1,000 people who were sending condolences. It was extremely uncomfortable and disorienting for me. Um, that was my experience, yeah. But right. But when I think about, you know, relationships, grief, I think it was, I'm not sure who was the original person who said this, but I think I heard Jay Shetty say on one of his podcasts about it being like a stone, and it's not that it ever goes away, it's always in your pocket. But with time or with years, it really just gets smaller. It's been new, learning how to do life without a mother. In the initial parts after her death, I really did feel like it had become like a boys' club. My two brothers and my dad, and then it was just me, and there's no more mom. And I worried. I worried for the relationship with my family going forward. I just feel like everything was disoriented. It didn't feel the same. Like my relationship with my dad didn't feel the same. My relationship with my brothers didn't feel the same. I had to really regroup and orient myself to kind of just a new way of showing up to them. It's been almost a year. I've been, you know, trying to understand if the relationship we have with someone ends with death, and it doesn't. My relationship with mom has changed, but it's still very much there. I still feel her presence when I go back home. I still feel her presence on long car drives. I still feel her presence when I'm cooking something that I normally would have called her or sent her a picture of. I still feel her presence when I look in the mirror and I feel really pretty because I just thought my mom was beautiful naturally. And I feel her presence so much in dad. They were together for, I think, 45 years. If I got that number incorrect, my bad, but it's around that, over 40 years. And yeah, they were partnering in life. And, as much as it felt like I was helping my dad to bury his wife um, in the beginning, I feel like that was what was needed. I really wanted to support my father in losing his partner. They knew each other way before I knew them, and I've just, I have so much compassion for him and his experience with losing his partner, you know? Yeah. So, a couple months after the funeral, I really, really had to be intentional about burying or coming to terms with the death of my mother, which is different. The different experiences there. My dad's wife has died and supporting him, but also it feels separate. Like my mom has died. It feels like two separate experiences, two separate types of support. One for myself and one for him. My brother's mom have died because we all have separate relationships with her. You see, um, and yeah, our relationship was complex. It's hard to kind of grasp how to navigate things that were left unsaid or unfinished. I feel like we were in the process of healing, of mending, of really understanding each other because mother and daughter relationship is, when you're younger, can be a lot different from mother and daughter relationship when you're both adults. Just the little differences that come with that, and these are good differences where we could talk about things like this. um, Grief, where we could talk about partners, where we could talk about love, where we could talk about marriage and being a wife and relationships and motherhood. You know, I'll just treasure the conversations that we did get to have, and it's a process learning to move forward, not move on, because it's always something that you feel. But learning to move forward with this experience. I've been stitched up. I think at this point, does it still hurt when I press it? Does it still hurt when I go home and she's not there and I'm looking through her closet at dresses that she loved? Sure, it's like poking at the wound, but I'm stitched up, and I'm moving forward, and I feel her with me most days, and I speak to her in my little ways, and I hope she hears me. And I am so just looking forward to our relationship expanding in another dimension now. I crave her guidance intuitively with everything from the side that she's at, and I hope that she's with all of us and guiding us all. And I truly feel that. I'm very big on intuitive guidance and uh, very connected to esoterics and the certain types of birds that I see out my window and that come to visit me, and the repeating numbers that I see constantly. I'm that girl. So I just truly believe that my mom is guiding me and still with me and here every day, and I love that. And I cannot wait because I also believe in mediumship. Um, and I actually wanted, my birthday is this month. So today's May 1st. My birthday is May 16th. And there is a show in Arizona with a pretty popular medium. And I really wanted to go. I really was just planning to talk to mom for 2 weeks straight and beg her to show up for me. Yeah, mom, love you. I hope you're seeing me try. I hope you're seeing dad try. I hope you're seeing my brothers try. I hope you are with all of us. I hope you know how much we miss you and love you, and yeah, how much we're trying to just move forward with this new state of relationship, how to do this new state of relationship with you after you've left us physically.